right. We should be live on both YouTube and Twitch. I'm going to hit start local recording because I forgot last time. And nothing should break. Not this week. Not with two of us. All right. Do you have Twitch up to take a look, see if it's up?
I do not see Twitch, but let me reload. Ah, there we are. I see us. Okay.
All right. Let me just make sure I can do both. Let's see here.
Apparently, chat will not load for the YouTube live for me.
Yeah, sometimes you got to grab the link and put it back in the dock, unfortunately. Or are you on YouTube and it's not loading?
Yeah, I'm on YouTube and it's not loading.
Oh.
There it goes. Finally did.
Yeah, it's weird sometimes.
Hello, Chard. Hello, Sinstress.
No, see, I'm not seeing any of that. Hold on. I guess my chat bot's not working. Oh, there it goes. Now it's connected.
Oh, my heart stopped. Oh, there it goes.
All right. Okay. I think we are good to start whenever you want.
Okay. Chard, we're not going to be doing. We'll announce when we get to spoilers.
Are you actually going to play it, Chard? Are you going to actually sit through all 300 hours of Witcher 3? Because you should play it, but I don't want to force a commitment on you. You still got to go through Horizon Zero, whatever that is.
We have apparently spoiled what today's episode is about. All right.
It's fine.
Okay. Toss a coin to your podcast and why Roach is the true hero today on.
Don't tell Chard what to do over the intro.
Welcome in, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Press B to Cancel podcast. Your favorite podcast. Well, at least if you don't have a migraine, it's your favorite podcast. I'm your host today, Sinistar 77. But I'm not alone. Thankfully, you guys have somebody else here to buffer me. I'm joined by my good friend Jake. Jake, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. Been a rough week health-wise, but today I feel great. And I honestly, I've been waiting years to do an episode about this game in depth. I've been waiting for somebody on our team to actually play this game besides me. This is one of my favorite games of all time, so I'm really excited for today's episode.
Excellent. Yeah. So, I mean, it was spoiled a little bit before the intro, and we may or may not put that into the audio podcast. So, for those that weren't here for that or didn't hear it, in the audio podcast, et cetera, today we are talking Witcher 3 in particular. Although we can talk a little bit about some of the other, the media, whether it's Witcher 1, 2, or the TV show or the books, et cetera, et cetera. So
Hell, there's even an anime now. There's an anime movie that came out, I think, like last year, I believe. Yeah.
Is there really?
Dude, the author of the books that the Witcher series is based on is based on a Polish novel series. That guy will sell his property to anybody who gives him money. So
And then
I
he'll
don't think
get
he gives a
angry
crap.
about it. And then he'll
Right?
get angry about it.
Yeah, we should talk about that too. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, so a little backstory. If you are new to the podcast or just as a refresher, every year, this is a tradition now. I think this is our third year. We do what we call our Sisyphean game. It's a game that we feel like we should have beaten, whether it's we didn't because it was difficult, or we didn't because we bounced off of it, or something, or we don't understand the hype. But we feel like we should. We challenge ourselves. We have a year to beat it, and then if you don't, we spin the wheel of pain. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because today we are talking about a game that I picked for my Sisyphean game for 2024, which I finished as of, oh, what, probably April 14th, 13th, something like that.
Yeah.
I think I finished it maybe last weekend or the weekend before. But Witcher 3. And my challenge was because I basically find that I struggle to fully engage with open world games. And so I kind of picked, I cherry picked what I kind of viewed as potentially the best open world game. And you might as well start strong, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, I have played through Witcher 3. I didn't 100% it, but I logged over 100 hours on
I
this
think,
playthrough.
to be fair, I think you played more of it than I have, and I like this. Like, I love this game, and I think you did more of the side stuff than I ever could have, which is crazy. So if you didn't 100% it, you came really close, honestly.
Well, I look at the Chivos, and I definitely didn't Chivo 100%, but a lot of the
Right.
Chivos are like, knock 10 people off of a high point using, art, or I can't remember which of the signs is the blast sign. All I know is just where they are in the wheel. Um so so I didn't really do many of those. I did finish one because I was really close that was a little bit like that, which was um in the third DLC. I completed one portion of it that's kind of optional. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
We're not going to do spoilers until we basically say, hey, we're doing spoilers, so don't
Right.
worry. I mean, we may talk a little bit about some of the early game, and I guess that would be spoiler-ish, but we're definitely not going to get to ending of main story or the DLCs until we tell you, hey, spoilers
Yeah.
coming.
I do want to talk about the DLCs and the narrative there because it is quite a bit of a different story than the base game. But yeah, you're right. We won't spoil to the later in the episode, but we do got to talk about it. This is a game that it's not new. I mean, it originally came out in, I think it was 2015, I want to say, so almost 10 years ago. I know it got a recent re-release. Well, recent re-release on the Nintendo Switch in 2019, so it's still 5 years ago. But
Well,
it's not a new game, but
and then a recent re-release in that they did the Uber HD, and then
right,
brought in
update.
also a lot of the funny enough, they brought in a lot of the creature comforts and fixes that the modding community had done
Right.
and made it actually canonical to the game. So
And actually, I would like let's talk about that for just a second then, because this is the game where, like, I was a huge fan of CD Projekt Red from Witcher 2, right? I
mhm,
loved Witcher 2, and I love what they did with that game. But I especially liked how after it came out and after it was released, I loved how they handled the pricing model. It was always going on
mhm,
discount. It's basically the poster child for GOG, which is their storefront that they own.
mhm,
But also the post game DLCs, which were all free and updates that were adding new content to it. But even when they were all said and done with the game, one of the guys who worked on the game, one of the programmers, on his own time made his own mod to modify Witcher 2 with additional features and stuff. So they've always been a company, or at least the games I love, where they don't release it and forget about it. There's a lot of
mhm,
post updates made to these games, and Witcher 3 is no exception. They made a lot of free content drops for this game, a lot of tweaks, a lot of fixes, and it's been great. That's why I think people are so upset with Cyberpunk when that released in the state that it did, because everybody's kind of expecting the same attention that Witcher 3 got, and it never quite got there. But Witcher 3 was a game that they definitely loved. It was their poster child for multiple years,
mhm.
and I mean, they've certainly made their money on this game huge, for sure.
Yeah, so if you've been stuck under a rock for the last, you know, 15 plus years, The Witcher is basically, the premise is these are um they're born human. They're basically collected as children. They are trained as basically a monster hunter. They're given a chemical compound that mutates them. So basically, in the concept of the story, in the canon, many people don't think of them as human anymore. And basically they're just designed to be monster hunters. And then they roam around, and it is a very pay for profit kind of situation. It's not this, you're not a hero out there in the world just doing your good because, well, I do good, right?
Well, it's interesting. So the world that they've built for these games, and this, well, not just the games, the books as well, but it was mostly humans as well. It was mostly an elvish society, and then humans kind of invaded the land and took over, as humans do. And at some point in the backstory of the lore of the land, there was a melding of dimensions, and monsters appeared. And with the coming of all the monsters, humans invented the technology or the process to make witchers. And at the time, in early history, there was so many of them, it was fine. But as the ages dwindled, they lost the technology, and they started having fewer and fewer of them left alive. So at the point in the story in Witcher 3, there's really only a handful in the various schools. And I think what you have three or four in Geralt's
Yeah,
school, and you get to meet
yeah,
all of them eventually, but it's Geralt and Vesemir, his father figure, I guess, in this, or his teacher, that are basically the main characters. And it's neat that there's so few of them that naturally it turns to, well, they're in demand and we need them to kill monsters. So Witcher's got to eat. So I guess they pay them as much as they hate them, which is an interesting
right.
take. But yeah, they're
Yeah,
basically
that
mutants.
okay. So that has a segue to me, and it's good because we're not talking spoilers at all here. But throughout the game, you run into so many people that are like, get out of here or else I'm going to kick your ass,
Yeah.
or you know, you shut your mouth, or whatever. And every time that happens, I'm like, do do you not realize I'm a I'm a fucking witcher?
It's like, would you spit in the eye of Superman and tell him he's a cunt? Like, I mean, that's what it is,
Right,
right? Like, why would you do that to somebody who could tear this place apart? And
right.
it shows you the character of Geralt, that he could murder these people that maybe are,
Hmm.
offensive, but he doesn't for the most
Hmm.
part, depending on who
I
you
mean,
play. Yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes limbs fall off, but yeah,
Yeah.
as they do sometimes. But I mean, the opening scene to the game, right? There's like basically a bar brawl with
Yeah.
some absolute terrible members of the human society,
Yep.
and he basically takes them out, only to have the innkeeper basically say, "Get the hell out of here! What the hell are you doing?" Right?
Right.
Like, even when he tries to help, he gets insulted and put down and threatened, and like he's basically a pariah no matter what he
Mhm.
does. There's only a handful of characters that are you can consider his friends in this story. It's an interesting dark take.
Which I loved. I pretty much loved every single friendship that was brought into the game. Whether it was a friendship that had been either in the previous games or had come from the books, which ties into a DLC. I don't think that's a spoiler to say that. Um, but I absolutely love. It's funny because I was playing it. I played Witcher 1. Oh, I don't know. I probably have 20, 25 hours in Witcher 1.
Okay.
And I mean that's very much a core style RPG, more so than say Witcher 3. And I did play Witcher 2, but Witcher 2 to me became so much of that action RPG that I was like, I kind of bounced off of Witcher 2.
Yeah.
It definitely had a different feel to it than 1 and definitely 3. But
Well, like,
go ahead.
well, one was like it had like a point and click combat, which is
Mhm.
interesting.
Mhm.
It was based on a very heavily modified version of the Neverwinter Nights engine, from what I
Mhm.
recall. And then Witcher 2 was close to what we have with 3, but probably not as nearly as open world. I wouldn't even call it open world. But
Yeah.
I fell off. Like, I love 2 and I've beaten it, I think twice. But every time I go back to replay it, because I do like to play it, I always get put off by the same section. It's you're basically imprisoned and you have to do a stealth sequence to get out. And
Mm,
that sequence, every time I go back to Witcher 2, I always fall off, and I basically give up. I've never had that with Witcher 3, and every time I go through
right.
it.
So that's in the episode because we Press B did this before Chard and I joined, but there was the episode on like uh, the games we love to replay, but then there's that one part, and and that's that for you in Witcher 2
Yeah.
is yeah. Yeah, and I'm with you. Stealth is like, there are people that love it. I do not. I do not like stealth in games.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I like at least the Deus Ex like Human Revolution game where it's basically at the beginning it's like, do you want to stealth or do you want to run and gun? I like to run and gun. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know.
Shoot, please.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
give me
So,
murder. It's easier. Yeah, I know. I'm with you.
yeah.
Yeah, shoehorning
But
stealth in the game is not one of my favorite things for sure. And I don't
right.
think there's any stealth in Witcher 3. You could maybe, well, no, I guess you could if you wanted to. There's certain things with some of the monster hunts you could be stealthy. You certainly don't have to, though.
Yeah, I think the amount of stealth that I did was I got myself into at least a position where I could start out with one of my signs and get the first hit, right?
Right.
Um
Yeah.
And so but really quick to go back to what I was saying is Witcher 3, there's a lot of moving pieces of these relationships that you have that kind of come in for a period and then move on and then come
Yeah.
back later. And I absolutely love, a lot of times I was like, well, now who's this asshole? And there's a history that I didn't know, right? But you
Yeah.
learn it as part of the game. So it's great. But
Yeah, that does that put you off though? Because so you played
no,
Witcher 2 and you played Witcher 1, but you didn't finish them. I'm assuming you didn't read the books at all.
I read the first, well, I don't think it was I read the one that was the series of short stories.
Okay. So my thing
Um,
was I didn't read the novels or the short stories before I played the games. I've recently
mhm,
got into the books, audiobooks, but
mhm,
um so for me I didn't know these characters really. Witcher 3, there's certain points where they kind of throw a character at you and I'm like, I know the name, but I
uh-huh,
don't know any of the relationship. Witcher 2 is convenient because in that game you have, sorry for the spoilers, but you have amnesia, which is a convenient trope for a video game, so you don't have to know anything. Witcher 3, you don't have amnesia, but because you did in the second the game before it, they kind of go with the trope of, oh, if you don't remember this character, it's okay because you had amnesia and you're kind of getting your memories back. So you don't feel bad that you don't have that deep history. Like you don't have to play Witcher 1 and 2 and read the books and watch a show
no,
to
not at
get
all,
this game. This game,
not at
even
all.
though it has a 3 in the title, really stands on its own really well. Like you could just play Witcher 3 and nothing else and
Mhm.
totally be fine. And I think that's a great thing.
Uh, which does segue a little bit into I understand that they are doing a remake of one, and if that's the case, I'm all in. I'll have to dedicate, another 100 hours to another game.
Yeah, I know I heard that too, and then I heard that they are working on a fourth game that will not
Mhm.
have Geralt. It'll be something new, and
Okay.
I hope it's good. I'll cross my fingers it's good. But I mean, my experience with Witcher 3 and the DLCs, especially that last DLC, Blood and Wine, I'm kind of good if they can end it there and not do anything else with Geralt. I don't necessarily need to have more Geralt in a story. I'm not
Mhm.
saying no to more Witcher, but I just hope they don't Mass Effect Andromeda and do a game just for the sake of a game and it ruins the taste of the
Yeah.
franchise, I guess, right? So I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean,
Now,
I hope it's good.
now I read the short it actually it's great. I read the book of short stories, which is fun because the television series has some of those little short story bits
Yes.
in it, which I appreciated. But I want to kind of um we haven't gotten there yet, Sinstress. I wasn't gonna get there until we said spoilers. Um, but Uh, I absolutely can totally see how Henry Cavill was a fan of the video games.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, the Witcher, the Geralt that he plays
Yeah.
is Geralt from the video games.
Yeah, the thing with Witcher 3 is the voice actor of Geralt, Doug Cockle, who's done a couple things, but I think he's gonna be known forever as Geralt in this role. Like he's so iconic in it. He's up there with Kevin Conroy as Batman to me. Like
Mhm.
he's the voice of this character. And when that TV show came out, I think they told Cavill it's based on the books, not the video games. Don't do the
Right?
voice from the games. But of course, he's a nerd. Like everybody knows, Henry Cavill is a huge tabletop and video game nerd. And what does he do? He whips out his best Doug Huckle impression, and he does fine. But I was not
Uh-huh.
expecting him to lean so heavily into the Witcher 3 version of this character. It's funny. I
But
don't know.
that said, the characters that you see both in the video game and that you see in the television shows are it doesn't feel jarring
Yeah,
to be like, well, that person was so entirely different in the video game, or that person was so entirely different in the television show. I really feel like you can watch both and you can see a lot of parody in the characters,
right.
which is great. I mean, I love the television show. It'll be interesting to see what the Hemsworth is it what or Skarsgård, which is it a
No,
Skarsgård or a
it's a
Hemsworth?
Hemsworth brother, not the famous one, the other one. I feel Liam, I think Liam Hemsworth. He's fine.
Oh,
I have nothing against Liam Hemsworth. He's fine. I mean, I didn't think Cavill would be a good Geralt, but I mean, I was proven wrong. It's just a shame that they couldn't go with him for the rest of the show. But I mean, that's
yeah.
a whole other thing. But yeah, the characters are pretty good from the game to the books to the show.
Mhm,
Like Dandelion is a fantastic character no matter what the medium. I love him in the show and I love him in this.
mhm.
Uh, Zoltan is the dwarf character.
Oh, I love Zoltan
He's
in this.
but he's a bit off in the TV show. It feels a little bit different than
Okay,
the game. He feels more
yeah,
like not as insane in the game as he is in the TV show.
okay. Yeah, in the game, I love Zoltan in the game. Um,
Yeah.
he is the one person I did a Gwent quest for in the game.
Yeah, Gwent. I love Gwent. I know you don't, but I love that mini game.
You know, I would probably enjoy it if I had given it a chance, but I'm staring down the barrel of a 100+ hour video game, and I'm like, you know, ain't nobody got time for that.
Well, especially like I mean, like you said, there's so many character stories, and they're all really well done. Like this is a game. And I think I said this in another episode. This is a game where the side quests are totally worth doing. I don't feel like I'm wasting my time with any of the side stuff. I mean, at least the stuff that has a narrative to it is all great, every quest. And I always wanted to do it. So it felt like I know when I first played the game, I got heavy into Gwent and I had to stop myself because I was spending more hours playing Gwent than the actual game itself. And I was worried I was going to burn out on the game. And I almost did. But I had to like put away the Gwent addiction and go do the plot. I'm happy. I was happy when they released a standalone version of Gwent. I have some issues with that, but I like that they spun it off into its
Yeah.
own game. But you don't need to play Gwent in this to enjoy it. The plot is definitely front and center.
No, although they sucked me in like twice on accident into forced Gwent games.
Well, it's funny because like every quest, every dialogue with almost every NPC, you have like a couple like introduce yourself, threaten them, talk to them, get a quest. There's always that one line: "Fancy a game of Gwent? Got time for cards?" Like
Yeah, I was
it's just wild how much you can play Gwent in this game. Everybody has a deck. It feels like.
I was gonna say when we were talking about how everybody like, bashes on you as a Witcher and says you're not, but they're happy to play Gwent with you.
Can I talk about Gwent if and we'll get out of the
Yes,
way then real quick?
yes,
So, what Gwent, for
absolutely.
those who don't know, Gwent is the in-universe card game that everybody plays. I don't know why there needs to be an in-game Magic the Gathering, but there is. Witcher 2 had like a dice thing that everybody ignored. But in this game, it's called Gwent, and it's like Magic the Gathering, but there's no mana, if anybody's familiar with that kind of card game. You have a handful of cards in a deck, and you have 3 rows on your side, 3 rows on the opponent's side. One's for like, your range units and siege equipment and sorcerers. You have another one for like, your melee characters, whatever. But the mechanic that grips me in this game is that you have a limited number of cards in your hand, and when you run out of cards, the round ends, and then it's best, I think, out of two out of three, I think
Mhm.
it is. But the idea that you have a limited resource, which is your hand, and you can keep playing cards from your hand, or you can know that you're going to lose a round and bow it early, but keep that card advantage for the following round. That part was really compelling. The other half of it was you can place all these units on the different rows, but there is special weather cards that will, when played, will nullify a row. And there's also cards that nullify weather. So there's that. It wasn't a complicated mini game, but there's just enough crunch to it that it just sucked me in. Especially when I realized later on that there's different faction decks. For
Mhm.
anybody, again, people who've played Magic, you have the different colors. They all play differently. In this, you have, I think it's Nilfgaard is the spies. So all the spies
Right.
do different things. I can't remember who the North, the armies of the North are called, but that's the first faction you get. They're all about siege equipment and all that stuff. There's a monster deck, and the monsters do
Mm.
weird, wild things like spawning each other and playing weather and stuff. There's enough crunch to it and enough cards in it. I can see why they said, "Hey, we can make this its own separate game," and they did. But just there's just enough there that it really hooked me. Like this is on the level of Triple Triad in Final Fantasy VII. It's on that level of addictiveness to me. It's pretty wild. I love it. I love how it's integrated. I can totally see why you didn't enjoy it though, especially when you're like going through a quest line and you have to play Gwent, or it kind of encourages you to,
Right.
or it gives you a thing of where if you do this part of this game of Gwent, you'll get a card or an item that you could possibly use. But being forced to do it now and not come back later is off-putting. I don't like
Right.
being railroaded to play Gwent. I want to play Gwent in my terms, I guess. But, but I thought it
Right.
was a great mini game.
I mean, I I was gonna stand up and grab a handful of my Magic the Gathering cards. I have played and spent way too much money on Magic the Gathering for
Yeah,
lots of time. And so honestly, part of it I think for me is that I've given up kind of the Magic the Gathering for at least the time being. Who knows if I'll make it back to it, but like if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, I purchased 4 taigas, actual unlimited taigas. I have 4 of them. So, if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering, you know
yeah,
that those cards are worth way too much money.
yeah,
So, um now let's talk about some of the other kind of mechanical pieces in the game. So there's Gwent, as a card game. Um, Obviously there's combat, um, but even combat has, you have these mutations that you can apply, um,
right.
and you earn. And so this is the other thing is, it's not an RPG where you're like pick your class. Are you a wizard? Are you a warrior? Are you a no? You basically, kind of
You're a
build
Witcher.
Geralt. Yeah,
Yeah,
you build Geralt as you level up in kind of your play style. And my play style was almost entirely quick attacks. I used a little bit of heavy attacks, but almost entirely quick attacks. And then on top of that, there's a magic system where I mentioned this earlier. It's signs. There's a sign that hits them with a concussive blast. There's a sign that makes them, lose their ability to think for a minute. There's a sign that sets them on fire. There's a etc. And so for me, I was about quick attacks. I was about the sign that does the blast, the concussive blast,
hard. Yeah,
and the fire, which is igni.
Igni. Yeah,
um I toward the end I actually started using the one that created traps toward the end in the last DLC.
I think it was Yarden. I think. Yeah,
I
you
think
you're
so.
you kind of have to use Yarden for certain encounters because that's the one that will stun ghosts. Right, ghosts can be really
Hmm.
tricky when they're teleporting around, but Yarden will
Hmm.
actually stop them in place for you. And I like that. I like that you're not picking a class. You're a Witcher. Different flavors of Witcher, but Witchers are known for they use swords. They use two swords. They have an iron sword for
Hmm.
humans, a silver one for monsters. That's the
Steel
lore.
and and silver, not
Steel
iron.
and silver.
Steel and
Sorry,
steel.
steel and silver, right? And then
Yeah.
you have limited spells. You're not a sorceress. You're not a wizard. Those exist in the universe, but you're not those.
Hmm.
But you have some magical ability. It's a handful of signs. And it's also about all about alchemy, the mixing of potions and using potions to
Hmm.
poison your blades or buff yourself with major buffs actually.
Yeah.
And then there's also things like other weapons like crossbows and stuff.
Hmm.
All of them have their use. You may specialize in quick attacks and spells, but you're still going to be using grenades and heavy
Oh yeah.
attacks. You're kind of not. I don't want to say forced, but it's beneficial if you use the whole package of skills available to you in every combat encounter. And like I think the first major monster you fight in Witcher 3 is a griffin, I believe.
Hmm.
In order to take that griffin down, you kind of use the crossbow. You definitely use potions to buff yourself. You may use spells, and then you're using your
Mhm.
attacks. You kind of have to use the entire package. And if you don't, the game becomes incredibly difficult unless you use what you're given. And that I thought
Right.
that was very unique in this game. You use the tools you're given, otherwise you're going to have a harder experience.
Now, I know that some people would hear that and be like, okay, the complexity is well, to quote Monty Python, the peril is too perilous. The complexity is too complex, right? No, honestly, it's very organic in how you kind of work your way into those. It's not like, I mean, yeah, you're Griffin, right? Yeah, that's your first major battle, but
Yeah.
you end up fighting wolves and dogs in the process of getting to said Griffin.
Yeah.
And, you learn. Plus, part of that quest, and I'm not giving spoilers because it's your first quest, you have to basically create some potions to make it so that you can do more damage to a griffin, right? So it teaches
Yeah.
you that alchemy. Um, yeah. So, and then on top of that, and this is something that you didn't end up doing. And I think that this may have been added as part of the DLC, but I ended up doing the first portion of it in the main game. But the school class sets. So
Right.
your armor, and your weapons. There's a set. So there's a torso, there's legs, there's gauntlets, there's boots, and then there's a silver and a steel sword that are all in the set. And then and some of them, like the one that I specialized in, was the feline school, and so
Right.
mine was actually designed for fast attacks, and it was light armor, it wasn't heavy armor, right? So, but that was actually pretty fun too. So there's also a building um uh element to this game where you
Right.
basically, or crafting, where you craft, well, you have crafted for you weapons and armor and all of that stuff. So
Yeah, this is a game where no matter where you go, no matter whose house you enter, whatever hole or cave you go into, if there's a box, you loot it. You just loot it. You just with reckless abandon. You're Link from Zelda, and you're robbing people blind. They don't care. It's okay. You steal from everybody. And one of the I'm not big on mods when you first play through a game, but I'm gonna tell you right now, when you play Witcher 2 or Witcher 3, you're gonna install a mod that gives you like 9,000 space in your inventory because that kleptomania is strong. And I feel
I
like if
never
you
did.
don't steal everything, really, I feel like you steal
Yeah.
everything because there's so many different weapons you find, different armor pieces, and I never want to like sit and compare that on the spot. I want to do that when I'm
Mm,
out of a mission or something. So I always like collecting everything, and I also like having all the books and the notes and the keys, just cause,
gotcha.
right? So I always hoarded everything. My inventory was a mess, but it didn't feel bad to sort it. The only thing I didn't like is that I ran out of space. So
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting.
And I think maybe they changed how that works since you played it, because
Maybe.
I wasn't limited by space, I was limited by weight. Um,
Yes, weight is what I meant. Weight is what
okay,
is what I
okay,
meant,
yeah.
yes.
But
9,000 pound weighter limit, yeah.
what's funny is most of the items, especially like quest items and all of that, have a weight of 0. So I ended up
Oh,
having
okay.
like just gobs of stuff in my
Right,
inventory. So
yeah.
um the one thing, yes, so Sinstra says she likes the crafting better than I did. This is true. I liked the crafting system until I got to the point where I was having to get my class set into that mastercraft or the highest level tiers, because you're taking these things that you've either looted or earned through the game, and you're breaking them down into one component, and then you have to break them into another component and break them into another component and then assemble them into another component. And that that's the kind of thing that Sinsters tracks much better than I do,
Yeah.
So so she helped a lot with that. And I did eventually get the Grandmaster tier
Yeah, and I don't
feline
think I
set.
ended up doing that Grandmaster tier, mostly because I had already put in so much time in the game as it was and knew how much I had to go, and, I mean, to find all those blueprints, you kinda have to really explore every map, and there's lots to explore. And it's not like there's much story tied to it. There's a little bit, but they're just
Mhm.
hidden around the map in cool little like caves or
Mhm.
dungeons, mini dungeons, towers. They're hidden
Mhm.
all over the place, and it's interesting. It's fun, but to get a complete set probably would have taken me much longer to finish the game, so I didn't bother. Not to say it, but you don't have to do it. I beat the game without it. I
Yeah.
I had a tier below Grandmaster, I think, because you can get those blueprints, I think, very easily. So, but I did like exploring. I just couldn't explore everything. I think when I got to the final zone of the main game, Skellige, I think it was, there was when I just saw the map and how big it was, and I was already at like the 120 hour mark. I'm like, I can't do it. I love Skellige's zone. I love the characters that was there, but I couldn't explore an entire zone and spend another 50 hours. Not
Yeah.
with the time I had at the time. So
Sinstress points out, so when I played through this, every main quest, every side quest, every contract, I basically did without spoilers. Like I didn't go look online. I just went through the game, except when I was chasing that feline set, and
right,
so yeah, Sinstress basically played my navigator.
yeah,
And so yeah, in that one I cheated a little bit, and she'd be like, go talk to this person in this town. Okay,
yeah.
cool. You know. So
I did like that, when we mentioned about combat and how, like, the game teaches you to use, this potion to fight the griffin. You have to use bait and use the crossbow in a
mhm,
certain way. I also like how every single monster in the game has a bestiary page, and I know
mhm,
lots of games have that, but in Witcher 3, they serve a purpose. Besides just flavor, text, and lore, it also tells you the weakness of the creature as you
right.
learn it, right? There's a reason you go around town and looting everybody's chest for notes and books, because when you read it, it tells you how to defeat the monsters, and it automatically updates the entry. So, like, there's these little goblin guys. I think they're called Neckers. It
Mhm,
tells you right out once you find the note that Neckers are very vulnerable to fire and exploding grenades. So when
right.
you know you're going to be fighting a lot of them in the swamps, bring exploding grenades, and they're very easy to kill. If you don't have it, you can still beat them, but it's harder. But it's just another example of how the game wants you to play the part of the monster hunter, and part of monster hunting as a Witcher is research and preparing. Right, the idea of preparing
Mhm.
your potions and your weapons before you go, and I love that with the story. So
Yeah.
it's neat.
Yeah, so speaking of the story, and I'm not going to go into spoilers here. I just want to talk about um every side quest. Maybe I can't say every single one, but the side quests that I played, my memory is that they all had an interesting story.
Yeah.
It wasn't it wasn't, oh, go collect 10 Murloc eyes and bring them back, right? It was some compelling story, right? So, yeah.
And even the ones that at first glance you're thinking, "Oh, I have to go free a village of something." And you think, "Oh, that's just standard, RPG fare." No, when you actually get there, there's a narrative twist or some kind of
Mhm.
turn to the plot that makes it interesting.
Mhm.
There's one, and I won't tell you where, but there's one where there's like a ghost haunting a dead village, and the
Mhm.
twist on why that ghost is there and how you take it out was incredibly interesting, and it was early on. Like, there's a lot of every monster hunt is more than just a monster hunt. There's a
Right.
story and a twist to it that was really compelling.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I ended up sitting there at a dialogue page with, and it's funny because the normal dialogue is kind of this just regular white text, but when it's a story progression dialogue option, it's yellow if I remember right.
Yeah,
And the, I can't tell you how many times there'd be a couple yellows and I'd be like, what what direction do I take?
yeah.
Do I do I play the Witcher who's been paid and I'm just going to finish this thing off, or do I take the story that basically showed that, oh, this creature's actually not so bad
Yeah.
and I've got to go back and do this other thing, right? So
Especially for a game where even if you pick what you think is the moral right choice, the game will come back and show you why you're wrong.
uh-huh.
So, like, uh, we're 40 minutes in. Do you want to start talking about spoilers?
Yeah, let's give a spoiler warning. So I'm going to draw out this little spoiler warning a little bit in case people want to drop off and maybe they haven't caught up. So, hey people, there's spoilers are coming.
Yeah. So
So,
I want to start off with just that first major quest with the I think it's the Griffin. You meet the guy from Nilfgaard. I think that is basically so in the Northlands. Basically, they've been invaded by the armies of Nilfgaard. So they're the invaders, and they're kind of managing and running the North, and they're oppressing the people, and they're considered the bad guys. But you go to this one keep, and you meet the head Nilfgaardian who's running things, and when you talk to him, he seems compassionate, right? There's a scene where a farmer is brought in, and the Nilfgaard's like, "You haven't given us the food we need. You haven't given us the grain tax," and the farmer is basically saying, "Look, we can't because X Y Z. You know, the
we'll
famine."
starve if we give it to you.
Yeah. So the Nilfgaard's like fair with them. It's like, "All right, here's what you're gonna do," and he seems like a fair and just
Uh-huh.
occupier, I guess, if such a thing exists. So then you go and do this quest and take down this griffin, and then you come back and basically he's a complete and utter prick. He's one of the worst guys in the game. He's such an
Yeah.
asshole, and he ends up having that farmer because the farmer, basically spoilers, I guess, was basically purposely not giving grain to the Nilfgaards because it's why should he give it to the occupiers? So what they do, they torture and beat him, and you can hear it in the background when it happens.
Yep.
And he basically
Yep.
the Nilfgaardian throws a sack of money at you and basically says, "Get the hell out of here." And that's what you were trying to do the right thing. Here you're thinking that this guy is a good character and that he's not so bad, but no, he's an asshole. And they're just the game is full of that where you don't know who's good and who's bad. I don't think you ever do. It's just everybody's a shade of gray. It's really interesting.
One of your friends who I actually really love the character. I don't know that I like the guy, but I love the character. What's his name that owns the bathhouse?
Oh,
You know who I'm
uh,
speaking
the
of.
spy, he's a former spy, right?
Yeah,
Dijkstra. Dijkstra.
Dijkstra,
Yeah.
yeah. And half the time you're like, Dijkstra is a decent guy, and then at the end you're like, "Whoa, hold on now," and you basically have to terminate your friendship with him
Yeah.
because he's, um, yeah, that I love the moral conundrums
Yeah.
because it is definitely not, hey, this is it's not KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, where like
Yeah.
this is going to raise your value or this is going to lower your value. No, it's like, well, this is the gray on this side and this is the gray on this side, but they
Yeah.
still overlap a little bit, right? So
Yeah, like it's a world where, like I said at the top of the episode, humans are in the past were the invaders. They came to this continent. This continent had elves and dwarves, and suddenly humans arrived in the story sense. And with that came oppressing of the elves and the dwarves. They're second class citizens. There's a lot of racism in the game. It's a
a
whole thing,
lot.
a
Uh
lot, and it's the
and
point where
and Zen and Zen aside.
yes, inside, yeah, they definitely murdering of people, right? Like slashing
Yeah.
and burning a forest to kind of it's brutal. It's brutal and it's dark. But what's interesting about the dwarves and the elves, if they've come together and there's a group of them called the Scoia'tael, they're basically terrorists or freedom fighters. I mean, you can pick your label for it, but I think they're probably called terrorists by a lot of the game. And like, but you're friends with Zoltan, and you're friends with a
Yeah.
few other people who are Scoia'tael, but you're also friends with a guy named Roach, who's
Mhm.
basically was in the second game a main character with the king before he was. Well, I'll
Wait,
save it for
Roach,
another
your
episode.
horse?
Not the horse, but the guy with the turban, the blue turban.
Is his name Roach?
His name is Roach, Vernon Roach.
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah. Right, right,
He
right.
named his horse Roach because of this character, because he thought
Yeah,
it was
got it.
funny to name his horse after this asshole. But
Right.
he's low key friends with him. But meanwhile, he's anti Scoia'tael because Scoia'tael killed all his friends. So Geralt's kind of like in the middle of everything going on, right? All he is like he's a witcher. He has friends with all the various factions. He kind of just leads his own path for the entire narrative. But there's another faction in the game, kind of, and that's just the idea of you have the new society, but you also have a lot of old magic in the world, right? Whether it's the three crones or there's the spirit of the tree, a lot of really ancient spirits,
Yeah.
creatures, something. I don't know how you want to explain it. and he kind of knows and understands them as well, that we are the invaders, that their people are the invaders to their land, and you have
Mhm,
to respect the old magic as well as the new stuff.
mhm.
It's really interesting, all the different parts of it.
Yeah, yeah, so, okay, so since we're talking some spoilers now, um, basically, the main storyline of the main game, so pre-DLC, is you basically are chasing down Siri, and if you're familiar with the television show, um, Siri basically, uh, you end up getting Siri as your ward through the rite of surprise. And if you haven't, if you want to, if you want to learn that, go watch the television series. They do it
Yeah,
incredibly well. Um, but basically, you're essentially her father figure. And so the opening scene, so this isn't a spoiler because it's opening scene. You're at the Witcher Keep. Um, I'm blanking on the name, but
Vesemir.
well, no, of the keep.
Oh, Caradon Morn, I think it is, something like that. Starts
Yeah,
with a K, but yeah,
Kier Morgan or Kier Morn
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Um, and Siri is outside practicing her steps, right? And she's actually doing when she's not supposed to. So that's the whole thing. And then it turns out this is a dream or a memory, a manufactured memory slash dream, and the Wild Hunt shows up, which is of course is the Witcher 3, the Wild Hunt. And the Wild Hunt at the beginning of the game, you're like, this is are these like skeletal figures? Are these like you don't really understand? Um, and then you basically, fast forward a little bit and you find out that Siri is missing, and if I remember right, it's Yennefer that sends you the letter that says meet me here.
I believe
I
so,
think it's
yeah,
Yennefer.
because
Yeah,
she knows that Ciri's in danger, and that, I mean, Ciri being who she is, who is the best person to hunt her down is Geralt, right? Because she
yeah,
would know, and the only one who cares for her.
yeah. So anyway, you're chasing Siri. And I mean, this is the main quest from front to back. Is
Yep.
you are always a step behind Siri until about halfway into the game. And then you catch up with Siri. Well, it turns out that's not just finding Siri and yay, everybody's cool, we're golden. No, this is like the Wild Hunt needs Siri. And they anywhere that she goes, the Wild Hunt shows up. And the Wild Hunt are a bunch of badasses.
Yeah.
Um, like they fly around on a flying ship. So, um, yeah,
Well, to explain what they are, right? Like, is that when we said that, humans invaded this world, it was originally a world of elves and dwarves, but there's in game there's a in the lore there's a this event called the conjunction of spheres happens, where all the
mhm,
various dimensions of a multiverse kind of converge, and creatures from one universe end up in the other. And that's one of those convergence is how humans came to this land. It's also the monsters came. There's also, I think, one of the factions, the Wild Hunt, is from another dimension where it's just elves rule, and that's the Wild Hunt elves. It's a
mhm.
whole dimension of, I guess they're all evil elves, I guess you could say. They're
they're
definitely
they're
driven. Their leader is definitely evil.
in the
Yeah.
Star Trek universe, they all have facial hair.
They have the beards, yeah. That's right, and wear sashes for no reason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But yeah, it's
Yeah,
so they're
so
from another dimension basically, and then they're trying to track down Siri because of what her bloodline.
yeah. So then you find out that there's this wizard that's been helping Siri, and you kind of find out that maybe his reasons aren't all good, aren't all,
Right.
you know. So once again, there's that conundrum. That was a fun little, finding out what happened to that wizard, and then
Yeah, and that's the whole quest
fixing
line.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we wanna spoil all of that, but it's
Yeah.
a lot of surprises with the narrative, and it goes places. I guess that's my take
Mhm.
on Witcher Three's the base game story, is it really goes places. It's not just your Geralt the monster hunter chasing your daughter. It's more than that, because your daughter has got this magical power, and there's basically interdimensional space elves hunting her
Yep.
down. And it
Yep.
goes places. It's a multiverse story, which is very much more epic and grand in scope than you would expect if you've only seen the TV show, I guess I would say.
Yeah, there is a point in the game. There's a point in the main game where it says to you, "Are you sure you want to go to this place? Because you will not be able to travel elsewhere after you go here." And
Yeah,
part of the reason why, spoilers, of course, part of the reason why is because you start doing some sphere jumping in
yeah,
the interdimensional thing. So
yeah,
it's not like you can go back to, your world until you've, eventually you make it back and you get to travel again. It's not like it locks you out. At the end
yeah,
of the game, you can go finish every side quest and everything that you want. Um but yeah, there is a point where it tells you, "Hey, are you sure? And you should probably save here." It locks you out of being able to travel elsewhere for at least a period of time. Um, and then Sinstress, the reason that I kind of said I didn't want to talk about that as a spoiler until later, is Sinstress says Siri could be fun to explore, and I guess I took it as a continuation. There's a point where you think Siri has died,
right.
and so basically the spoiler is she didn't.
Well,
So
so there's multiple endings to the game, I guess, right? So Siri being who she is, so in the Witcher 3, they've lost the ability to make new Witchers. But so she's not a Witcher, but she has incredible magical powers in her own right. I mean, she's playable in parts of the game and she's badass.
yeah,
So
oh,
one of
she
the
is
endings,
badass.
yeah, like
Yeah,
one of the endings is that she could become a Witcher, kind of. Another one is because of her magical lineage, she could become a sorceress and join the sorceress schools. But the best ending, canonical ending, is that she gets to be her own person, her own lead, her own destiny. She's the girl of space and time, and she can go anywhere. Like there's a for those who played Cyberpunk, there's hints that she's visited Cyberpunk 2077 as an Easter egg, and
oh
that could be
really?
a yeah that could be a really awesome thing. If Witcher 4 is your Siri and you get to cross dimensions in various scenes and locales, that could be really badass. I don't know how they would do it, but I could see it.
Yeah,
So she's definitely an interesting character. I love the portions where you get to play as her. She has a teleport mechanic, which is really awesome, and she's got badass sword combat like Geralt. Obviously, she doesn't have
yeah,
the tech tree and all that stuff because it's only a small thing. But I would love to play a full game with just Siri. That would be really awesome.
yeah. So basically, kind of to finish up the main game, um, I mean, you eventually save Siri, and part of my okay, I do not normally tear up over video games. Like very rarely. I can probably remember two or three instances. Um, one of them being some of the side quest stories in Chrono Trigger. Man, they nail
They
you,
hit,
right?
yeah,
Yeah, the fucking frog story, Jesus. Um,
yeah,
but the end of the main game Witcher, I seriously was cutting onions at the end of that game. It is that level of an ending. Um,
yeah.
and then yeah, let's get to some DLC because we're
Well,
we're coming up here on
just
an
before
hour.
that,
Yeah,
so
right.
the neat thing about the story with Geralt is that there's no happy endings for Geralt in the base game. It never
Mm,
feels like he
mhm,
gets a total
mhm,
happy ending, right? He's just a Witcher for the rest of his life, and he kind of accepts that. There's romanceable options, right? He's
mhm.
got a kind of a love triangle going on between Triss and Yennefer. I think
Uh-huh.
canonically it's Yennefer, even though she treats him so horribly.
Well,
But there's, but
remember he and Yennefer were together because of
yes,
a curse, right?
right. They're cursed by a
Yeah.
djinn, which
Uh-huh.
also, if you've
Uh-huh.
seen the TV show, you get that back history, which is awesome. Or if you read the short stories.
Yeah.
But in this game,
But
there's a side quest where you break that curse, and that part was very emotional, very touching,
yeah.
and I love that. But like
Yeah,
the idea is that,
I was like, I don't know that I don't want this love triangle to end. But what's
but if it's
great is that
real love,
yeah,
then they're gonna stay together. They
and
don't need
that's
a
what they
curse to stay
play it
together.
out as. That's what they
Yeah,
play it out as is let's
yeah,
see what happens now that we aren't, forced to
right.
do it. Yeah.
But like you think that by the end of Witcher 3, you're thinking, okay, him and Yennefer, they're gonna be a thing. Ciri's her adoptive daughter. It's a happy ending. But no, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't let you have that. Geralt and Yennefer are kind of on a break, right? Yennefer, Ciri is gone, right? Like you said, you think she's dead. Like they don't give Geralt a break. And at the end of Witcher 3, I love the ending. I thought it was great and touching. It was so epic. You basically stop a
Mhm.
universal ending, like a universal apocalypse from happening. It's an
Yep.
epic end to a story, but there's no happy ending. And that's pretty rare for video games and movies. There's usually a happy ending for the main characters, not in this game. It just ends, it's good, but it's not like the happy ending after all.
Right. I mean, it is a satisfying ending.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Don't think of that as like, oh, you're gonna be just, you know, oh, at
Yeah.
the end. No,
It's
it's a
not bad.
satisfying
Yeah,
ending.
it's
It's a
not
satisfying.
cliffhanger. It's not cliffhanger. It's not a bad or poorly written ending. It's a well written ending. It's a fantastic ending. It's just not happily ever after, I guess is my
Mhm.
point. So yeah, so that's the ending of the
Yeah.
base game.
So, then there's 2 DLC packages. The first one is Hearts of Stone, and at the beginning of that, there's an event, there's a battle at the beginning of it that almost drove me off. Almost drove me off. Work your way past it. Work your way past it. And I'm not going to say that Hearts of Stone was some of the best storytelling, but at the end of it, it was one of those like, I don't know. We were Sinstress and I, we were laughing. It was great, you know. So the whole premise is you end up accidentally killing this prince. It's an accident because I'm not going to say why, because if you want to play it, I'll let that play out for you. But you accidentally kill this prince.
Right.
And then you have this battle on a beach where they've taken away your equipment and they put this stupid ass sorcerer against you that can fucking teleport around this goddamn beach and
Yeah.
just throw fucking fireballs at you. And so when I finally beat that, I moved on. But that's just the beginning flavor text. Like the whole premise there is because you killed this prince, you're on the hook and you have to go, help this. Anyway, you find this guy who, um, well, you find out that he's immortal. He gets stabbed and he just kind of keeps living. Well, it turns out that there's this what's the character's name that's the wish
Odin.
giver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Odin.
Odin.
Yeah.
So there's this wish giver, but he's always this guy that gives wishes that they follow your request, but they have his twist, right?
Right.
And so it's very much the nefarious, it's a Loki style character, right? Um, well, you end up having to uh solve these 3 requests for the character that can't die. And
So
they
yes.
sound yeah, they
So the
sound
guy who
like they're
can't die is Everett, right? So the thing is, his wish was basically he wanted to live forever. So Odin gave him immortality by giving him a heart of stone. So he
yeah,
lived forever, but he lost the ability to feel, to love, to hate, right?
right,
And that's the
right.
thing. So you're doing quests that for him now.
Yeah, and they sound like they're impossible quests. Like one of them is go show his brother the best night of his life. Well, his brother's dead.
Yeah,
And then the other one is like bring me the house of this family. Well, how do you bring a house to a person, right? And so they seem like these impossible quests, but this is where the fun comes in. The night of his brother's life, and I really don't want to spoil this DLC because
yeah,
this DLC it's about the quest by quest experiences, and that makes it the joy. I didn't feel like the whole story was this amazingly cool, like the main story and then like the second DLC, but it was very much like, okay, this quest this quest was clever as hell because of X, right?
right.
And so, um, and I don't think this was the one. Was this the one that had the no, I think it's the second DLC that had the quest where you end up taking a chemical that makes it so you can talk to your horse roach.
No, I think that's the next one. Yeah,
Yeah.
this one as being the first DLC was a lot more focused on this one side story,
Mhm.
with Everett and Odin, and yeah, I won't spoil the ending, but I really like how it's another example of You have a character, Everick, which at first
Mhm.
glance feels cold, suicidal, like crazy, like he wants to murder like he feels like he doesn't give a crap who he kills, like completely merciless creature, and you're doing things for him to help him, and you question why. But the
Yep.
ending of it loops around, and it makes you go back and actually feel sorry for the character, and you have
Yeah.
sympathy for the character. The ending to the DLC was one of those really great moments, and it was a very touching moment. And there's different couple of different endings as well for that DLC, but just the making a character at first impressions completely flipping on its head, much like
Mhm.
the base game did with a few other characters, I thought was really awesome. Finding out Odim and what he actually is. I mean, if you
Mhm.
couldn't guess, but like the way he was written in his dialogue, the twist with his wishes being cursed is very on point for Witcher lore. And I just liked how the base game was this saving the universe type of story. The universe is going to end. All people on the planet are going to die, and suddenly Heart of Stone is more no. This is more focused on the fate of one man,
Yeah.
Everick, and
Yeah.
that's it. Is a much more focused story, and I really dug it. Like I mean, if you're coming from the TV shows or the books, this story in Heart of Stone is probably going to feel more like a Witcher story to you. I think,
Mhm.
as opposed to the first game.
By the way, I looked up Odim because I wanted to truly understand. Like, I wanted to see if there was any confirmation that he is who you think he is, right? And there's never
Right?
any confirmation, but he's who you think he is at the end. Um,
Yeah.
but but I looked and apparently, or I watched a YouTube video that was basically like Odim has been sprinkled into including the main game. He appears in the background a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
He's like
he's
the first
just
character you talk
there.
to. Yeah,
Yeah.
like in the tavern. He's the one he's like the first guy you sit down and
Uh-huh.
talk to, and he has a conversation with you. Like it's wild that they took that character and then in a DLC, he is what he is. He's this immortal, absolutely object of evil. But you meet him in the
Mhm.
base game in the first like 10 minutes. It's wild that they tied it together. And like I don't know if he's in the books. I don't think he's in the show. I don't know if he's just a game
Yeah,
only creation, but he's definitely fits the feel of the franchise, right? Like this
for sure.
the whole franchise in lore is rooted in like Polish like folklore and
Mhm.
fantasy, and it's really well done. It's really well done, and he just fits part of that.
Yeah. And then the second DLC. Um, yeah, the second DLC really brings it home, and you alluded to this at the beginning. You know, the story is you're in an entirely different land now.
Yeah,
You're basically you go to this land where there's a
Toussaint.
duchy, yeah, Toussaint, and there's a duchy, and the duchy knows you very well. All of the knights know you very well. You're actually almost even semi liked in this. Like, it felt so much
Yeah,
less like, oh, it's a Witcher. He's a piece of shit non-human, right? To yeah, you get that a little bit,
yeah.
but yeah,
Well, because like in the base game, it's kind of like mud and grime and dirt and blood and piss everywhere, right? It's a
uh-huh.
land that's been invaded by an outside force. It's miserable no matter where you go in the base game of Witcher.
Right.
And you're right, you're spat on everywhere. And then when we say the word knight, it's funny because in the base game, if you encounter a knight, it
Mhm.
would feel really out of place because
Right.
there's nobody who has an honorable code, I think, in the base game. But when you meet a knight from Toussaint, you almost burst out laughing and how seriously he is of a knight. He's almost like a
Uh-huh.
paladin level of honesty and moral code. And when you talk to them and they take you to their land, and the whole land is that moral code. It's like green emerald hills and wine fields
Oh,
and castles. It's just completely
yeah.
180 on terms of theming. And it's so interesting to see Geralt, who's this reviled character mutant in the base game, is
Uh-huh.
like you said, he's more respected in this world. It's so funny.
And you're absolutely right. The visuals in in the second DLC, which is Blood and Wine, the visuals are stunning, like
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous. It is some of the most beautiful scenery I've seen in a game.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, so the story there is you go to this land and these there's so far there's been three or four killings of basically kind of like nobles. And so you've been brought in to try to find what beast is killing these nobles. And once again, in that world of The Witcher, where things are not black and white, where things are gray, when you finally encounter the beast, when you finally find the beast, you're actually stopped from destroying this beast by a friend who's a friend from the books, but they bring him into the game, and it's great. One of my favorite characters of all time is Regis.
Right.
And Regis is basically like, hold on there. He's not this way. And you're like, but he's very much being this way. So how are you sure? Right. And so yeah, you spend, another 30-ish hours of DLC basically finding out who this beast is. And at the end you're given kind of that conundrum of, do I Witcher finish him, or do
Yep.
I, you know think maybe he's not so bad, right?
Yeah. Get
So
paid or do the right thing, whatever that is in
mhm,
this world, right?
yeah,
It's wild, especially when we can say it. I mean, the friend Regis is a vampire, which opens
yeah,
up a whole lot of other weird stories, like concerns. Like your friend's a vampire, but
uh-huh.
he's one of your oldest best friends, and you trust him to a great degree. And even though he's a vampire, he's not an evil vampire. He's kind of trying to like toe the line between what he has to do to survive. And
There's only
yeah,
one point where he is at risk of harming humans, that
yeah,
vampire, right?
yeah,
And that's very much part of the quest line. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's I don't know. It and I went into a lot of the side quests where, like, you end up you play in a game, you play in these games where it's the knight's games, you're representing a knight who can't represent himself. And at the end I had my family crest on a crossbow. I had my family crest on on Roach's, saddle, accoutrement, whatever. Like, it was the house of Geralt of Rivia was, yeah.
Well,
So,
one of the big things of that DLC is you basically unlock, or if through a quest line, you basically get your own vineyard, which
mhm,
which seems kind of odd that a Witcher would get a vineyard, but it's nice that you have a little place to call your home, and definitely feels like that. And the quest around that is really interesting. It's
yeah.
it's fun.
That's the one achievement I was talking about at the beginning. I actually finished upgrading my home. My
Okay,
in
upgrade the
in
vineyard. I think I did that one
uh-huh,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
I
okay,
think
so you end up going through, and since we're talking spoilers, you find out that this beast is a vampire. And so it's Regis's friend, who's also a vampire, and you find out that he's been compelled through um what's the term, where blackmail. He's being blackmailed
blackmail. Yeah,
to kill these nobles, and he's making it look like each noble was killed because of, a sin, right? Greed, or whatever. And you chase it down, and you end up stopping him before the final person is killed. um so you end up stopping him before the final person is killed, and then you find out that the blackmailer isn't who you thought.
yeah.
And then you find out who the final well, okay, I don't know if this is the case because I continued the story, but there's a point in the story where you basically have finished the beast storyline, and it seems like you're given the option to basically be like, I'm good, we're good. I don't know if the game terminates at that point if you take that option. I didn't take that
Um,
option. I said, "Hey, there's still a fifth person that was supposed to, or sixth, or whatever the number of people are. There was still another person to be killed. We should find out who that is." Right. And that was after you basically kind of took out the big bad.
Yeah, I don't. It's been so long since I've played Blood and Wine. I don't recall. I know there's multiple endings to that DLC, based on because there's a couple characters that you can save or not save, and that
Mhm,
affects the storyline. I
mhm,
don't remember what happens. I really want to go. I would love to go
mhm.
back and play this game again, but it's mostly I just want to play Blood and Wine again. Is what it is to go back and see it.
Mm.
But I mostly remember the actual like the end of Blood and Wine is the one I remember the most nowadays. But I don't know. I think there's definitely multiple ways you can handle that encounter though, for sure.
All right, well, you're given a choice, and I don't know if the game steers you into it anyway, but I basically was like, "No, let's figure out who the last victim was supposed to be."
Right.
And it turns out it's the Duchess.
Right.
Like, it's the leader of Toussaint. And, so you basically go and report this, and that whole thing plays out. Um, and then, yeah, you kind of alluded to this as well at the end. Um, you you retire.
Yeah.
You and Yennefer shows up and meets you at your vineyard slash homestead and basically is like, I'm good to hang out. Let's just, and and uh and like you have talks with your friend Regis. Like you have these deep dialogues that are like, have you ever thought about, you know, how you want to go, do you want to be a witcher for the rest of your life? Do you want to, and you're like, no, I think I want to, try this whole, and yeah, at the end you're like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm good to be a vineyard owner with Yennefer here at my side.
You Captain Picard it. For
Mhm.
those who watch Star Trek. Yeah, you
Yeah.
basically retire in a vineyard. Like how wild that you have a character who suffered so much through, that base game and then the previous games, who's almost like accepted his life that he's going to die killing a monster at some point. Like most
Mhm.
of the people in his school are dead because of
Mhm.
dying from a monster or being backstabbed by humans. So here we have a character in the DLC where it lets you live and kind of have a happy ending, right? Yennefer's
Mhm.
around. She's not the type of person who's going to love you or not, although she brings up, she brings up a stuffed unicorn fetish that she has again, which is like a recurring thing through the franchise. So that's basically your clue that you know what, this is probably the best you're gonna get, but it ends happy. It's
Yeah.
like sublimely ends happy. It ends at the point where I didn't have any questions about the fate of any of the characters. I kind of knew where Regis was going. I knew about Dandelion. Siri is doing her thing. Even Triss, who's the love
Mhm.
interest from the second game for me. I was
Mhm.
happy with all the characters and where they were going. Some of the stories didn't end, but I knew where they were what they were going in that picture. I didn't have
Yeah.
questions. And it's rare for me that a game ends where all the loose ends are tied up. And that's why I was so surprised when this ended and I heard that, years later that they were thinking about a fourth one. I don't think I want one. I think I'm good because I don't think you can mess with an ending like that because
Yeah,
anything else you do is going to open up more plot threads and I don't want that.
if they pull, Geralt out of retirement, I'm gonna,
Yeah. I
yeah,
don't need Lethal
they
Weapon
can't go
4.
that direction. They can't go
Yeah.
that direction.
Yeah.
As Sinstra said, Siri, exploring Siri would be a lot of fun. A prequel might be okay, but I think a prequel would be, eh.
Yeah. I think for me, because of the story of the Witcher universe, go back to when the Witchers were common and when
Mhm.
they all had separate schools, right? Well, Geralt, we didn't really say. Geralt was part of the school of the wolf,
Well,
and they all
scroll
have,
work, yeah.
qualities of the wolf, right? And then there's one for the cat and the snake and all that. Go back to when there's schools, right? And give me Hogwarts. I want to pick my own. I want to make my own Witcher. I want to pick my school, and I want story based on that, and make it a brand new character. I would love to see that. Kind of like what
Yeah.
Mass Effect did. Mass Effect lets you be Shepard, and you kind of got to pick your background a bit, and you kind of led your own way with the story. Give me something like that, or Skyrim, I
Mhm.
guess.
Yeah.
I'd rather they do that than anything else. But I don't. Even then, I don't know. I don't think I want it because I like how they wrote the story of Geralt so well, and I
Mhm.
kind of liked how narratively they brought in friends from decades ago that were not in the game, but the way they explained it in universe, it made sense. Like Regis in
Yeah.
Blood and Wine.
Mhm.
I didn't know who Regis was. I didn't read the books at the time. He was not in the portion of the second game at the time I played. He wasn't in Witcher 3, but it didn't feel unnatural that they brought him to the story. they explain enough of him that it felt okay. He's my best buddy. He's also a vampire. It felt like it made sense. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I like how they wrote. I really like the writing in this game. The writing in this game is so well done, and it's so rare for
Mhm.
a game.
Yep. Yep. Um, and if you do play, and we highly suggest that you play this game.
Yeah,
Um, and you do play the third DLC, hunt down the quest. It's a side quest where you make it so that Roach and you have a dialogue. It honestly was some of the best dialogue in the game, and it poked fun at itself. You know,
yeah,
it showed that while these are very serious games, they can have, some fun at their own expense.
yeah. There was a scene where Geralt and his friends get wasted in the base game and
Mhm.
have some dress up fun. I'll say, and it was actually pretty hilarious. Like there's a lot of funny bits in this game that were just fantastic. It's all the more reason why with the TV show, I'm kind of sad that they're not going the direction that they were originally planning with Cavill, because I feel like
Yeah.
he would have brought in some of that funny bits had he been given
Mhm.
enough space with the show. I don't know. It's Witcher 3
Yeah.
is one of a kind, man. Like it's such a great game.
Yep.
And
And
like we
by the
didn't
way,
even say,
when we say Dandelion, I can't remember his character's name in the show. They changed it for the show.
yeah,
It's
it's like a
it's the
translation
bard.
thing. It's the
It's the
bard, yeah.
bard. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he's pretty much similar in the game as he's in the show, though he sings a lot better in the show. Yeah, it's and we didn't even say things like, the graphics in this game 10 years later are still some of the
Mhm.
best graphics you'll see in a video game. It helps they did an HD pass a few years ago, but still, it holds its own to Cyberpunk. It holds its own to Baldur's Gate 3 or anything else that's come out in the last 5 years. The music is
Oh,
epic. I used the
oh,
music during a D&D campaign I did over the years, and I still like to listen to playlists of it. It's so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, much like many current open world games, it's got its bugs. Um,
Yeah.
there were some really unfortunate times that the game would just outright crash and die on me.
Oh, really?
Um,
Even today still?
oh yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and yeah,
Yaskier. Thank
Jaskier.
you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it
Um,
first came out, I remember the reviews were all glowing, but there's definitely people had picks with bugs in the beginning and issues with the controls. The controls of
mhm,
Geralt moving around, navigating, and fighting was not the greatest. Not too long after release, they released patches and updates that give you more options on how you want to control Geralt, and it made it a lot more smoother. But I still remember early bugs of it's funny. One of the bugs was you have a horse, Roach, who, if you played Cyberpunk, you can summon your car wherever you are. That comes from Witcher 3, where you could summon Roach wherever you wanted, and where he used to pop up sometimes was not the greatest. Sometimes he'd
mhm.
pop in and summon on top of a house. That was
Uh-huh.
fun. It was such a meme for a while that when they released a standalone version of Gwent, there was a card with Roach on top of a house. Like it's a wild poking fun of itself. It was definitely had its bugs, but when you have like an open world game, at the time I would compare it to Skyrim and those kind of games. I felt it was less buggier than Skyrim, but it still had
Probably,
issues. Yeah.
probably. There's less, stretch physics in this than there is in
Yeah.
Skyrim for sure.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. That's
um,
the thing.
yeah.
It's definitely an RPG with some issues, but I mean, when you have that many lines of dialogue, that many areas to explore, that many items, you're gonna have bugs.
Yeah.
But I
And
feel like it's gotten better.
the world is expansive, and Jake and
Yeah.
I talked about this while I was playing it. Yes, I did fast travel a fair amount, but there were times that I would just ride Roach from point A to point B, thousands of steps and just enjoy it. And it has a mechanic where you can just hold down the shift key and you don't have to steer,
Yeah.
and it works until it
Most of the time.
doesn't. And when
Most
it
of the time.
doesn't, you're like, "Oh, thanks, Roach."
Yeah. Well, it's like he snaps the roads, right? Which is
Uh,
honestly, I wish Cyberpunk had that. But I didn't fast
but he can't
travel.
cross a bridge to save his own life.
No, yeah, though I mean the hitboxes aren't great there. I didn't
Yeah.
fast travel until the last zone of Skellige. That's when I'm like, "All right, guys, I gotta finish this game," and I started fast traveling on Skellige because
Mhm.
I think there's areas where you need a boat, if I'm not wrong, but
Mm,
I didn't bother fast traveling in the beginning because I liked riding Roach. I felt the ambience was great, the day-night cycle, the sunrises were
mhm,
beautiful, even in the
mhm.
shittiest looking zones, the sunlight was amazing. It's just an awesome, pretty looking game. Like,
Yeah.
I'm working through Final Fantasy VII Remake, which came out around the same time. Like, I feel Witcher 3 looks better, and I like
Mhm.
Final Fantasy VII Remake's graphics, don't get me wrong, but Witcher 3 just looks so good and it holds up today. Like, it's wild how good that game looks.
I do remember also, there's a sex scene in the first DLC that's just, well, go make yourself a cup of coffee and come back when it's done.
Yeah, some
It's
of the
just
animations don't line up.
it's just clumsy. It's just
Yeah,
clumsy. Like, I
yeah.
was like, "Are these 2 14-year-olds trying to figure out how this works?"
Yeah, it's funny because this is one of those games this is a game, if you're familiar with Skyrim and Nexus mods, you know that there's modders, and then there's modders that go all in.
Mhm.
Witcher 3 has some of those mods, and it was a lot of those scenes. It's definitely not a kid's game, even if
No.
you set aside the insane amount of blood and gore, there's also a lot of, like, sex and nudity. Like, I'm actually
Well,
curious how
and
people play this on Twitch, but I
there's
guess it's
one
okay.
storyline in the main story that I would not want a child
Yeah,
to walk in on at all.
yeah,
That scene sticks with me. So,
yeah,
yeah. It has to do with a character, an NPC called Horson Jr. So, I'm not
yeah.
gonna spoil it more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal game. But what like I know I think we did top 5 episodes a couple years ago, and this is on my top 5. It's still in my top 5. This is one of those games where it's funny to say, like, 50 years from now, they're gonna look at games of a generation, right? Because we look at films of a generation. What is the
Sure.
defining movie of a generation? We can't really do it with games because games only started, like, 70 years in the '70s,
Right.
so we're still in that generation. But I feel like future generations are gonna look back at games from now, and they're
Mhm.
probably gonna pick Tetris, and they'll probably pick a
Yeah.
Mario. But I think Witcher 3 is definitely one of those games of a generation, just for the graphics that I hope will still hold up
Mhm.
in 50 years, but also just the story alone. The story is so good in this game, and I think
Right.
it warrants being considered a game of a generation. It's one of the best games ever made. I don't care who you're talking to. It's
Yeah.
up there.
I I will tell you plain and simple, yeah, it took me over 100 hours. I played a lot of side quests. I played a lot of the bounties. Um, and it took me, over 100 hours to do the original or the main story and then the 2 DLCs, but I don't feel like a single one of those hours was wasted. I don't feel
Yeah.
like it was. So, um and there are definitely games that I'm like, why did I go play that? Right? And this is not
Yeah.
one of them. So,
Like, why did I spend 60 hours doing this, right? Like, I spent
yeah.
Final Fantasy VII Remake, I spent 2 hours going in circles in a train yard, and I questioned my existence of why I even played games. But Witcher 3, every side quest, even the smallest of side quests,
Mhm.
either it tugged at the heartstrings, or it made
Yeah.
me laugh, right?
Right.
Which is rare, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty good. It's enough that it got me to start reading the books,
Mhm.
which is rare for a game to do that. It's enough that when the TV show is announced, I was so excited because of how much I love the video game. So
Mhm.
it's just wild.
Yeah.
I everybody needs to play this game. Like, I really wish more people would play. I mean, I know lots have played it. It's definitely one of the most widely played games, especially with the way CD Projekt kept, putting on sale, giving away
Right.
for free. That HD update was free if you bought a previous version of the game. It got re-released on the Switch, which, take your issues with the port or not, it was on the Switch, which
Right.
is wild. So it's just everybody needs to play this game.
Yep. Yep. It is a magnum opus of a game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to bring up about it. I will say if you're still on the fence and you like Henry Cavill's Witcher, you get more of him in Witcher 3. It's just a
Yeah.
different person that does it. because Henry Cavill very much played that character.
Yeah.
So um, yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah, um, yeah, epic game, epically good. So I do not feel bad for playing it. I'm glad I made it my Sisyphean game this year.
Yeah, I wish I had that game. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's I keep saying every couple of years there's certain games I like to go back and play every few years. Deus Ex is one of them. But Deus Ex is like 20 hours tops. Witcher
Yeah,
3 I would love to go back and finish, but it's 100. Mass
yeah,
Effect trilogy, I love Mass Effect trilogy, but it's like 200-300 hours to get through the whole trilogy and I can't do it. But I have memories of Witcher 3 and they're all positive. Just and it's not
mhm,
just the ending, it's not just the beginning. There's dozens of story plot points throughout that entire game and the DLCs that I still
mhm.
remember today, and I love those twists and turns. It's just the story of the Baron, which is one of the earlier
Yep,
plot lines,
yep.
is heartbreaking, and there's different ways you
Mhm.
can do it, man. But man, that's another character you can't stand, but by the end of it, you feel so bad for that whole family, and it's just so well done. I don't
Yep.
know. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
fantastic game.
there's a place in my heart for the Baron, even though he's an asshole.
Yeah,
Right? I mean,
yeah,
no character, not even Geralt, no character in the game is this black and white, oh, they're
yeah,
just a good character, or they're just well, I no, there are plenty of just evil characters, Horson Jr.
yeah,
Um, yeah. So
yeah. All right.
cool. Well, that's all I got. You got anything else?
That's an hour and a half of gushing, which is, I think, the plan with this
Yeah,
game. I am really glad to do this episode finally. I'm glad you played it.
me too.
I think Wolf started this one. I don't know if he finished it or not. And then I know Chard was debating playing it at some point. I hope he does
Right.
because
I
this
hope
is
so
a good
too.
one. Yeah.
I hope everybody can find 100-ish hours to make their way through this. Well, and really, if you cut in half the amount of side quests and the amount of bounties I did, you'd probably still enjoy it just as much. But I don't know. I also enjoyed the fact that I was always like 5 to 10 levels above the quests I was getting because I had done so many side quests.
But it's you could even mainline it and yeah, you add level stuff so easily and that's fine. Like I don't play this game for the combat, although I did
Yeah.
like it. I played it for the story, and the story
Oh
still
yeah.
holds up. And I think there's difficulty sliders if you don't really want to get
There is.
involved with the hard combat. There's options.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
That's
Well,
good.
yeah, anything you wanna I mean, aside from this, do you anything you're doing that you wanna talk about or
Yeah. Hold on. So I did sign up. Oop, hit the mic. I did sign
yeah.
up for a game of the month thing because I'm a mark. So I got games in there. I'm gonna probably do a video unboxing it. So I got that analog pocket, which is a handheld device, an FPGA device, and I wanted that. What if Grandma bought me games? How awful would they be? So I paid $30 for this box of random Game Boy games, and I spoilers, they're probably trash, and that's okay. So I
We
want to
have
get it on video. Yeah,
we have Donkey Kong at home. Donkey Kong at home.
it's pretty pretty much what it is. I'm probably gonna get like Shark's Tale or some shit game or SpongeBob SquarePants something. I don't know.
Uh,
Maybe there's a good SpongeBob game. I don't know, but it's only handheld games, and I am actually looking forward to see what I get. I know I know it's not gonna be $30 in value of games, not with the way retro games are priced these days.
right.
So I think it'll be funny. So I'm gonna do a video on that over the
Yeah.
next week. I think I
So
have three
you have
months of
not opened it?
boxes. No, I haven't opened it.
Oh, yeah. All
So I
right.
don't know
Cool.
what's in there. I don't know if it's in box. I don't know if it's Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. It's one of those systems. Something I can play in the pocket. So it should be a good time.
Nice.
Or
Okay.
not. So,
Or not. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, for me, I haven't been streaming again. A lot of it is life is just I've life is just getting in the way. Like we've actually been trying to figure out a way to like bank some episodes because we're struggling sometimes on Fridays to have enough
Yeah.
time to we love doing the podcast, but sadly it seems like April, May always kind of gets a little rough. So,
Yeah.
um, but I do want to get back to streaming when I can, but I'm not going to promise a date at all. Um, and I've been doing some DJ stuff with my buddy on Saturdays. Uh, yeah, it's been fun.
What's his
So,
shout him out. What's his channel?
Soul Archaic, SOLARCHIAC, something like that. Um, but yeah, on Saturdays, we start generally around 3:30 Mountain Time. We kind of trade off sets, and it's fun. And then at the end of the set, we have our own Wheel of Pain, where we spin it, and the Wheel of Pain decides what we play. Last week, he added a category of songs the DJ hates, and it kept rolling up that option. I think he turned the weighting up on that option. You know, but
Very good.
I played things like tub thumping.
Yeah, I mean, there's people like that, right?
Maybe.
Some people, yeah, I used to whenever that used to come on the radio, I used to cringe. I used to do 12-hour shifts back in the day, and it'd be the same 50 goddamn songs in the radio because, of course, that's the way they did it. And tub thumping could come up on the hour every hour, and I used to just hate my life. It's
Yep.
just so awful. I'm so sick of that song.
Yep. So, but it's fun. We do anything from industrial to electronic. Occasionally we pull out butt rock. Yeah, it's we call it Smatterday because we basically play what we decide. But I am building some set lists for this Saturday tomorrow if you're listening live, or probably a couple days ago if you're listening to the podcast on audio. So,
Oh,
so
great.
that's me. Awesome. Well, folks, we appreciate you all being here. Go over to pressbtocancel.com and find our socials. We have Discord. We love to chat in Discord. Like, subscribe. If you've made it to this point in the podcast, we appreciate you even more.
Yes,
You're
shout out to
troopers.
November because as you called me out last week, you watched the end of the episode. Thank you. I do appreciate it. I'm glad at least one person besides me gets to the end of the episode. That's great. No, seriously,
Yeah.
it's really great. I appreciate the folks who followed us on Twitch as well. We
Mhm.
do broadcast on both YouTube and Twitch, and we've gotten a few more followers on Twitch. That's awesome.
Yes. Awesome. Well, this has been another wonderful Press B to Cancel. Now you can go back to your sad life of not having us around. Toss a coin to your witcher.
There you go. Good night, everybody.